Okay, good evening, everybody. Give us just, Councilmember Husnick and I are just jumping on from an EDA meeting, so just give us a minute to get fully logged in here. Okay, I know we are on a tight, we're on a tight timeline for tonight's 7 o'clock council meeting. And so I will call this budget workshop to order. Just a reminder to participants that we are in workshop format this evening. And Karen, I'm not sure if I'm seeing Karen on. I am not seeing Karen on. Patrick, can you note attendees for the record?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. And our first item on the agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would welcome everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Dan is on the EDA meeting, so will not be available to put up the flag. So we will do it without the flag this evening. If you would like to stop your video in the bottom left-hand tray of Zoom, you are able to do so. I'll give everyone a moment. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have an open forum on tonight's budget workshop agenda. Were there any submissions for open forum this evening?
There were not. Okay.
Seeing no open forum comments, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the 2021 budget discussion. And before we get started, we did have a request come in through the EDA meeting previously, or the downtown group that was meeting via the EDA, for all of the budget materials to be posted online. And so if we could have the materials for the last budget workshop, that if we could have that updated, and then the materials for tonight also added to the agenda, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to Patrick and Sandy to walk us through the planned presentation for tonight. And also, council, this was it's intended to be fairly open in Q&A. And so we'll open it up for any opening remarks and then turn it right over to council for questions. Patrick, Sandy, any comments to kick us off?
No, Sandy, it's your show.
Yep, I'll just do a short presentation. Nothing changed too much from last time, but I did get some updated numbers from Washington County, which really didn't update too much. So I'll show you what I got. If everybody can see that on the screen.
We can.
Okay. And really it's kind of going through an overview of what we went through last time. I can get this to work right. Okay, there we go. And just going through the calendar again, we're at the August 24th meeting. We do have an opportunity on August 31st to have another meeting if needed. On the 14th, we do we'll have it on the agenda to approve the certified proposed preliminary levy. And on Monday, October 12th, we will provide the final budgets, which will include all the non-levy budgets as well. I was intending on bringing them tonight, but I still feel that we need to shore up a few more things to get a good product to the council at this point. On December 14th, we will have then the ability then to do a truth and taxation public hearing and the adoption of the final 2021 levy and final budget. So this will just be the opportunity to do the preliminary levy, and we also have that opportunity in December to approve and adopt the final levy. Nothing changed here as far as the budgets that are affecting the levy. We're still at the same place that we were last time we talked on Monday. I won't go through the amounts at this point, but just so you know, nothing has changed at this point in time. And nothing has changed with the proposed levy, still at a overall 5.83%. We are adding the 50,000 for the capital equipment, as well as the 50,000 for the capital improvement. Everything else and the general fund at 482,758, and everything is pretty much, like I said, the same as what it was last week. This gives the impact over the last few years as far as what type of increase we've had. We're pretty much in line with where we were in 2020. And, you know, with the exception of 2019, you know, we're right in line with where we have been in the last few years. This changed, like I said, very slightly. What is estimated at this point for the tax rate for 2021, the Washington County has their taxable value estimated at this point. Of course, things can change, and I think this is going to be more of a conservative approach. Last year, I think it was the same thing, and we ended up going a little bit further to the better. But they're saying there's a 1.2% taxable market value increase estimated, as well as the 1% fiscal disparity decrease, which offsets that taxable market value. So I think this is conservative, but yet right in line with where we were in 2020. I don't anticipate that to change.
Hey, Sandy,
Uh-huh.
can you back up? The 1% fiscal disparity decrease, what does that turn into for a dollar amount? Or it's 1%, but 1% of what? Give me some,
Yeah,
it'd be helpful to have some context around that.
You would have to go to the calculation at Washington County actually has a calculation of that. It's 1.2 million is what the overall disparity is normally for city of Forest Lake. So it's a subtraction from our taxable market value because of the disparity throughout the Twin Cities area. They try to smooth that out throughout the metro area. So they use this as a way to do that. But every year, what it does is it fluctuates based on what our growth is in our commercial area. And you know, when our growth increases, of course, our disparity then decreases. The funding that we have that actually subtracts from the taxable market value to get to the tax rate.
So I have to ask a basic question, and forgive my ignorance. So a 1% fiscal disparity decrease, does that mean that, is that financially advantageous to us because or is that a disadvantage to us?
It increases our taxable market value, which then would increase our tax rate.
Okay.
But like I said,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I don't, the 1% decrease really isn't that much of an effect. You know, when you look at the 2021 to the 2020, you know, there really isn't much of an effect. I think the biggest effect that happened on that is last year, there was a 5.3% market value increase, whereas this year there's a 1.2% market value increase estimated at this point. So I think that had more of the effect on the tax rate than the disparity decrease.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And when you look at that, if you estimate the cost to a homeowner, and this really didn't change that much, There was maybe a few cents that changed from the last time we looked at it. But plugged it in now that they have the estimated tax impact worksheet on the Washington County website. You plug this in and it comes out for a $300,000 home. It comes out to $1,179. And when you look at the monthly, the weekly, and the per day, it didn't change much, like I said, from last time. But comparing it to the 2020 property taxes that came out with the actuals, it was 1,169 last year. So that shows what kind of increase is expected, which is a $10 for the year. So, like I said, this is just an estimate at this point. I'd like to think that Washington County likes to be conservative in their estimates. So, this could go closer to what we were, even closer to what we were in 2020. So again, the next steps are continue to discussion of the preliminary 2021 levy if needed. Today, hopefully we'll have some good discussion on that as well. Certify the levy in September, finalize the 2021 budgets, discussion of the 10-year plan and strategic plan priorities, and continue discussion of the final 2021 budgets and bringing that final and levy and budgets to certify in December. And with that, that's all I have. I know there's going to be a lot of questions that will come our way, so we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sandy. Council members, with that, we will just open it up for questions, whichever direction you would like questions to go this evening. The floor is yours. Sam, go ahead.
Any kind of a levy increase, I don't care if it's 0.5%, is a big deal, especially in a year like now with this COVID thing and how people are being affected with their own wages and that sort of thing. And I think we want to be really, really careful about looking at maybe tightening some of those things up a little bit. And so I'm certainly going to be looking at that. I'll have some suggestions coming up. I know we can look at it downward at least, maybe a tiny bit. If we can't, we can't. But I think we certainly need to look at that. So that's all I have right at the moment.
Sam, to expand on that, do you have some? It sounds like you don't have any particular areas you want us to explore right now.
Not at the moment. I'll have something for the next meeting for sure.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful. Other questions? Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you. I had sent a quick email out. There was a couple of questions I had, CNN, and hopefully you got that. It is what was in regards to a couple of line items in the budget, and I'm scrambling now to find it on my screen here. And of course, I can never find anything when I need to. But it was in regards to the road improvement. We put 50,000 in year one. I believe this year it's supposed to be 100,000, but it looked like in the budget it was only 50,000.
That was 50,000 in 2020, and then we increased it another 50,000 for 2021. So that brought it to 100,000.
But in budget numbers, it only showed 50.
For 2021, I believe it shows as 100,000.
I'll double check that. But
Okay.
Right. But,
And I can bring that up again just to show it.
Sandy, could you share your screen? That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're pulling that up, go ahead, Kathy.
I just think Paul might be looking at the dollar change, the dollar amount change, because that caught me as well. When I first looked at it, it threw me off a little bit. And then I realized there's a proposed fiscal year 2021 of 100,000, but then the next column over is showing the dollar change, the dollar amount change for 2021. And you know, it took me a minute for that to register as well, so.
Yeah, that's correct. It was the dollar amount change. It said $100,000 for the capital improvement tax portion of the levy.
What percent of this is just general cost of living, wages, wage increases, you know, insurance, you know, general COLA? What percentage of the proposed 5.83?
Well, you've got a couple issues that are not COLA, and if you look at, for example, the capital improvement is just in addition to the paving fund, so that's really not a COLA adjustment, nor is the debt service. The debt service, we're on the debt service schedule.
Okay,
So you immediately subtract also the capital equipment. So you have three portions of the levy that have nothing to do with COLA. That's the debt equipment improvement and debt service. Those are not COLA related. That's equipment that's balancing the budget related,
right.
which gets you to an increase of the general fund levy at 6.25%, but at least 3 to 3.5% that wages and benefits. And then Sandy, I think you have other things in there. We've got the communications position goes to full-time, so that's increasing that FTE to the full-time is because we only budgeted half year. There's adjustments for health insurance and other kinds of insurance. And Sandy, if you want to go ahead and comment on any of
What I
that.
can do is maybe I can pull up last week's and show you what, I mean, a big part of the increase also had to do with, we had decreases in revenue. There was revenue sources such as building permits. It was like $115,000 worth of revenue that we brought down because where the economy is today, we're just not getting the building permits that we had in the previous years. And so a big part of that increase was due to a decrease in revenues. I mean, we had 6% of an increase for insurance, probably a net of 2 to 3% in workers' comp. You know, the wages and salaries, you know, we're at that COLA increase and what was at 3%. So when you look at everything else, there really wasn't a huge increase in the overall budgets. It really had to do with that revenue decreasing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just at a top level, that's part of what makes this, while 5.83% increase is maybe on the higher end of what any of us would like. If you look at the areas where we actually have discretion, it's pretty limited from my perspective of what I've looked through, because again, and part of it is, Sandy, to your point you just made of it's the reduction of revenue or revenue that just isn't projected to come in, as well as things that are contractually established or committed to, and there's not a lot of, unless we're going to talk about some structural changes, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of discretionary type things that we can move on. You know, Sam, as I reflect on your comment and think about how do we, you know, make that 5.83% the right number for 2021, I am also looking at the, you know, the overall the tax rate change, and the fact that we are tax rate neutral does give me some, you know, that's a data point that I think is important this year, because it shows that we are not growing faster than our tax capacity is growing. And I think for a city of our size, and recognizing kind of some of the deficits that we have in the capital improvement fund in particular, that's an important data point for me.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about the perceptions that all this create, you know.
Completely.
And,
Yep.
and so, you know, I agree with, there's some, you know, we have all the things settled with the police and public works and everybody else in those. So we have to honor those things. And I understand all that stuff. And I just want to make sure that we're mindful of what we're doing here and try to keep it as lean as we possibly can.
And I think that's where communication comes in, communication to I mean, I think we did a really good job last year, sort of framing, the work that we did around the bond, and helping the community understand, what our goals were with that. And once you were able to do that, and frame that well, the community really understood what it was that you were trying to accomplish. So, I think that communication side of this is really vital, really critical. I too am conscious of the fact that we're in a really strange time right now with a lot of uncertainty. But I also know that our community has some expectations of us to move the city forward in a way that is responsible. I'm really not seeing, what I'm seeing here. I'm really not seeing anything that's, kind of, too outside of really the direction that we should be going. We created a strategic plan. We're trying to align budget with that strategic plan. Operationally, it is what it is. I'm feeling pretty comfortable the direction we're going. I have a couple of areas that I would like to potentially see a little additional investment in, and that's some of our parks and lakes funding. I know we've had Forest Lake Association come before us a couple of years in a row. We are making some investments there. Those investments are down, over what they were a number of years ago. I think they make a good case for, a pretty high percentage of taxes in this community being paid by our lakeshore owners, and that being probably our number one asset in the community. And so from my perspective, and I'm feeling pretty good about just about everything else. That's one area that I would just like to see us potentially make a little additional investment than we're currently making. And I did have a question to that end. How do we handle the weed harvester? Do we own the weed harvester and they pay the staff to run the weed harvester? Can you clarify that for me?
Oh, Dave, you still on the line there?
Yes, I am.
Cut.
So the current agreement with Forest Lake Association is that we hire a staff member and then run the harvester for 67 days. And what that total of labor comes to, then we invoice to the Lake Association and they reimburse us. So Public Works handles the harvester, the fuel on the harvester, the trucks, to dispose of all the weeds, to have an operator grab the truck back and forth. So everything except for the person driving the harvester around the lake. So we ran into an issue, I'd like to say 2 or 3 years ago, and then a couple years in a row, that there was volunteers that would come from Forest Lake Association and run it. And we were ending up, onshore with the harvester. We were ending up with blown hydraulic lines. We were ending up with people feeling too full and we had to shovel everything off of it. So it was decided we're better off finding the operator. They can still compensate us for that operator, but we want to have control of who's running it, to have some mechanical ability and to have some training. So as of right now, that's kind of the trade-off. We base it on a $15 an hour wage over 67 days, so it's roughly $8,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then the city, it's not even on our fund for weed harvester. It just kind of get tied into normal operations. We have a full-time employee that's hauling at least 2 loads a day, plus running a truck around. So it's just kind of an amount that doesn't really get tracked. It's just in normal operation. So if you have a guy mow him on, you'll hop off the lawn more quick and then go and grab the truck and all that. So that's how that kind of works. It seems to work well. We just show it as an expense and then it crosses itself out on revenue, but it's easier, I think, to control that operator going forward, just so we can make sure it's on the city's dole, so they're insured when they're operating and all that. So it's just, I think it makes more sense to do it that way. And it just seems to work. The last 2 years we've done it that way and it works a lot better.
Okay.
Am I correct in thinking when they presented to us, they wanted to increase those hours? Am I correct for the harvester?
Yeah.
They wanted, yeah, they have, I was looking at their budget today. I got some submission. We'll hopefully clear this up for you by the next time we meet. But they're asking, sorry, I just got to get the spreadsheet here. For an additional $1,000 for this year, and for next year, I should say, for weed harvesting activities. That's not included in the budget right now. And their total ask, just to be, and again, I have to go through this, but their total ask is an additional $13,000 to be included in the budget for weed harvesting and treatment and things like that. So we have to work through and verify some of that. There's a little bit of confusion on who pays for what, but by the next time we talk about this, we'll know better.
Because those were the two areas they identified that, I felt seemed reasonable for additional city investment, was the weed control and the increased harvester. And so that was going to be the next question, as have we quantified those two items specifically? I'd still like to see us pursue a partnership with them around that dock and fishing pier with our Parks, Trails and Lake Commission, but I feel like next year would really be a good planning year for that. But I think those two areas in particular, I think warrant a good look from our end.
Yeah, I got a spreadsheet from Jerry that attempts to explain this, and I need to go through it, to be quite honest with him, understand what he's saying here. So, but we'll know.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to look at that spreadsheet with you, Patrick, because our total budget for the weed harvester is 62,000, and he's lumping in Clear Lake expenses inside that Forest Lake one. So that some of that budget isn't quite correct, because the weed harvester should actually be zero, because we're not budgeting any dollars for weed harvester, and that's
yeah, and that's the clarification. I mean, we really need to present to the council
Yes.
how much we contribute versus what they contribute. And we don't have, David, and we were going to talk at Wednesday's meeting, Stephanie, but we will sit down and together and figure this out, because it's definitely not clear on how much the city participates versus what they participate. And I think I don't want to give you a false impression that it's more or it's less or whatever. I want to make sure that you know what the city's contributing to this organization, and make sure that we're right before we present. I think I only got this either this morning or on Friday afternoon, so we'll take some time to go through it.
Yeah, because I know there are some expenses paid to the watershed. There are some paid directly to Fourth Liquid, so if we can sort through that, that would be really helpful to me.
Yeah, and some of the magic on what's paid to the watershed then bills the city for some of that again. So, we really have to understand how this all meshes together.
Okay.
Is there any, as we're thinking about that request from the watershed or from the Lake Association, is there any ability to meet their needs through some increased participation from the watershed district, that there's some additional pass-through revenue or matching funds? If we're going to, increase our portion, is there any appetite or opportunity for discussion for the watershed district to provide some matching funds that help to get them where they need to be, but also recognizing it's kind of a tough year for the city?
Yeah, I think it's always worth talking to the watershed district about either matching, upping their contribution, because the Lake Association does try to help the lake keep healthy and green and all that. So it's worth a discussion. I'll be happy to have that discussion, and we'll be happy to let them give us, contribute more money, so.
I do know that with the watershed, they are shifting their focus a little bit more to the recreational part of the lake. They're very still involved in phosphorus and everything else, but there's been a noticeable shift in the last year with their discussion to do more to make the lake more recreational. So they probably would be open to a discussion.
Yeah, I think that's worth pursuing. I also like Councilmember Bystrom's point on giving some commitment to the Lake Association on evaluating in 2021 opportunities for a dock or pier. I think that's probably funded not so much financially as in cash out the door, but more as in staff resource or some maybe joint participation in some grant or seeking some grants. It's more of a planning phase and probably other than staff effort, zero expense other than, again, staff effort. I appreciate that there is expense associated with that, but that, you know, it's on our mutual working list, but we're not looking to fund that until probably 2022, if 2021 is the planning year for that project.
Mark, could I backtrack? Just,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please.
I just wanted to comment on a comment that Councilperson Bystrom made, and rightfully so, about the strategic plan. I mean, it's very important part of our overall planning for the city of Forest Lake. It kind of points out our goals and that kind of thing. The only question I have about that, though, really is, I wonder what that strategic plan would look like if we were working on it now during a pandemic. It might be completely different. And so I think we just need to kind of keep those things in mind. And it works into the overall decisions that we make on this taxing. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Very good. Councilmember Gerard.
Going back to my earlier discussion on the capital improvement, the extra 50,000 for the road, and so Sandy has it showing, hey, there it's 100,000. But if you go to the 22-page report she sent us by line item, when you get to the capital improvement fund 211, there's a line item for $50,000 year over year. I took that to be capital improvement from the tax levy. Is that something different?
No, I didn't think I gave you the 211, but if I did, it probably wasn't updated at that point. I thought I gave you the budgets for just the general fund, but the budgets will be reflected for the 100,000.
Oh, okay. So then my other question, and hopefully the answer is yes. On page 15 of that same report, the fire department shows a line item for 82,000 in insurance. And I know we moved it, all the insurance to finance. My question was, is the fire department special? Did we miss it?
They are.
Please tell
They
me
are
that.
special.
They are special. They actually get charged. They get charged for the insurance because we actually get reimbursed 25% from Columbus. So we do have to reflect that expense in the report so that we get the actual reimbursement back that we are due from Columbus.
Thank you. I was so happy. I thought I found 82,000.
And you are correct, the property tax line in the capital improvements should read 100,000, not 50,000. And it is 50,000 across, so we'll make sure we get that right.
Thank you.
And just to go back for a second to the, you know, this kind of the story that we're talking about with the tax increase, and I agree that, you know, times are a little bit different, but if you would remove the dollar amounts that are included in the capital equipment, capital improvement, and debt service, you're talking about, you know, somewhere around a 3.8% tax increase only. So it really is those three things that are driving. And then if you add on top of that Or if you only say we've lost 115,000, so if we had that $115,000 left, we'd be at a 4.7% increase. So the story is the lost revenue and trying to match what our goals are. So those are two big items in this budget right now.
And that's kind of where I was trying to get at when I asked the question about, cost of living and that kind of thing. So thank you, Patrick, for kind of reframing that in a way that's makes a lot more sense than where I was going with it. I did have, if it's all right, Mayor Bain, I did have one question about the position that we're adding by funding or eliminating the contracted lawn care and athletic field maintenance and snow plowing. Can you, and you may have said it last week, can you remind me what is the goal with that position? Is that a parks person?
That's a parks maintenance person.
Parks maintenance.
Dave, if you're on, you can maybe do the best job of describing that.
Yep. So in a roundabout way, up until 2 years ago, we didn't even have a fully funded parks maintenance person.
Okay.
So slowly but surely, we're trying to get park maintenance people back. And on top of that, just eliminate contracted services. So in 2020, 2019, we funded a position to take back parks mowing. That position didn't even get funded till about September of 2019. So we actually took over all of our parks mowing in 2020. And this position would give us another 2,080 hours of park maintenance by just eliminating the Fenway contract and the city center contract. So slowly but surely, we're trying to get a park maintenance staff here in Forest Lake because right now everybody used to be in streets. So you could never track what you were doing for parks hours. It was take a guy from Blacktop and have him mow lawn, or take the guy out of the street sweeper and have him go and cut a tree down. So we're not trying to separate public works, but we're trying to, and along about way, we want to have a parks division where you're going to have a person running that department that's going to know what parks need maintenance, that are going to be able to handle calls when they come in, work more in line with Jamie and activities to set up for events and all that. But with only being funded a half a person, it was just never positive. So we're trying to do two things: is eliminate all the contract mowing that, we're paying almost $60,000 a year for Fenway to get mowed once a week. Well, why not have a full-time parks maintenance person that will mow out there one day a week, but then we'll have a lot of other days freed up to do other maintenance. Like, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but that's what we're kind of trying to get to.
No, that's really helpful for me, because I feel like we sometimes not really kick the can down the road where parks are concerned, but we defer a lot where the parks are concerned. And so the investment and the human resources to keep the maintenance side of them up, I think, is really huge. I think oftentimes you can, find grant funding for, programmatic things or improvements. But it's very that ongoing maintenance to keep them operational, and especially now in the COVID world, when they're being so highly utilized, I think is really, really important. So I appreciate the clarification on that, Dave. Thank you.
Yep.
Council members, other questions or additional analysis that you would like to request for our next discussion? We are 20 minutes before our planned end date for this evening's workshop. I guess maybe a time to ask a question around desire to have a follow-up workshop session on the 31st. I know Councilmember Husnick, it sounded like you had some additional comments that you wanted to maybe perhaps bring forward. I I know that there are other funds that are outside of the general fund that we haven't started exploring. And so I am open to us having a check-in on general fund on next Monday. And if you are ready, staff, to continue the discussion on other funds, maybe we take a blended approach where we spend as much time as necessary to get general fund squared away. If that is a short conversation, so be it. But then maybe we transition to some of the other funds. I'd like to keep those conversations moving if possible, but I'm open to feedback here.
Well, I think we have to make sure that we understand what the council's wishes as far as the tax levy goes. That's obviously the first and foremost thing that we have to decide on, because we have until December to pass a budget, or in the schedule of November or October. But I don't think I hear anybody wanting to raise the tax levy any more than it is now, unless I missed my guess. So all I've heard is that we should be looking at it again and maybe trying to find a way to bring that down a little bit more. So if we're comfortable with the tax levy the way it is and setting it at this rate until we can go further, that's, or do you want to do that first? Do you want to try to get that down before later in the fall? And then that's a discussion on what we can adjust within the general fund, unless there's a true objection to anything right now that comes to the top of your head. And then we do have to get to the other funds, and those are important funds, the water and the sewer funds, to go through those and to make sure we're all on the same page with those.
Me personally, I'm comfortable with doing as you say, Patrick. I mean, keeping it at the 5.83% and seeing if we can whittle it down from there. If we can't, we can't. I understand that. But that's the approach that I would use, or that I would be comfortable with anyways.
Thanks, Councilmember Husnick. If I may maybe suggest two things for next Monday, if council is open to having a budget workshop on Monday, August 31st at 6:30. Two things that would be helpful for me to close the close out the conversation on the preliminary levy. And remember, again, reminder to council that this is a preliminary, we are doing a preliminary approval. We cannot go larger than, but we could always make smaller if we chose to make smaller by December. But two things would be helpful for me. One is additional discussion with the Lake Association and kind of clarifying weed harvester and what is the staff suggested contribution if there's any increase for 2021. That would be helpful to bring that conversation to a close. And then secondly, it would be helpful, we've talked about the different dynamics that are pushing on rate, but if we could see a plus and minus schedule of the 5.83%, what is the impact, both plus and minus, of the additional revenue and then the changes, so that we're able to see kind of here's the reconciliation of that 5.83% by category to the extent that it's, that we can break out. You did this, your memo teed up the qualitative factors for that, Sandy, the memo you had last week where you kind of talked about those factors. Here's how much was because of workers' comp, here's how much because of health insurance. Just putting the math in that so we can see, the 5.83% is because of this much because of, lost building fees, and this much because of, that would be helpful to just, again, kind of, that lines it all up and then gives us the ability to step back and, in full context, does this make sense?
Do that.
And I did note the reduction in the proposed 2021 in those building permits and planning and zoning permits as well, which I think is really wise. We don't have a crystal ball. So to be able to look at the budget in whole, with that additional context, I think is really important to do. So thank you, for reflecting probability. So.
So what I hear is the lake fund reconciliation, lake request reconciliation, reconciliation of the levy adjustments, and then starting on the other funds. Okay.
Mara, we can't hear you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I think I did a whole bunch of talking and nobody heard me.
You are correct.
Did you, Sandy, did I come through when I was trying to describe the reconciliation of rate
Yes,
of the,
Yeah.
okay.
the dollars.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. So when you couldn't hear me, I essentially just repeated that plus the Lake Association, and Patrick jumped in and summarized perfectly. So on top of that, council members, we have an additional week. So if anything else comes up in your review or in your conversations with community members, certainly get that feedback over to Patrick and Sandy so that they're able to reflect that for Monday's workshop. But it does look like we are looking for a workshop on Monday, and then whatever additional funds are ready for review, I think we're ready to tackle that as well. All right. I don't mean to cut the conversation short because we do have an additional 12 minutes before our council meeting is ready, or before our council meeting kicks off. Is there anything further, other questions, comments we would like to make at this time? I'm not seeing anything. Quick question related to logistics. Are we staying on this meeting for our council meeting?
Good question.
Yes, we are. Yeah, Mayor, yes. Sandy, can you stop sharing your screen so we can, there we go. Yes, we're staying in this same room, so I'm not going to shut this off. It will continue on right into the council meeting that starts at 7 o'clock.
Perfect. If
So
there
really-
are no further,
Sorry.
yeah, if there are no further questions or items for our workshop, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
I motion. Aaron.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And Karen, could we have a roll call vote to adjourn?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And we are adjourned, and we'll see you all here in about 10 minutes.
Hey, Dan, can you hear me okay? Good.
Hey, Dan, I want to check this too. We good?
You're good to
Sound
go.
good, Captain.
Yeah, you got me?
We can
Okay.
hear you.
Technical difficulties that Dan helped me with today, so dialed in now.
I had to change my password for the computer, so of course that always throws a few things off.
Kind of weird. Feel like a fireman. I'm down here by Al, using one of his offices. I think I'm gonna move.
All right, I see that we are recording. I see all council members are in attendance. So I will call our council meeting to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Here.
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson.
Here.
Councilmember Byström,
Here?
Mayor Bain.
Here. Next item on our agenda this evening is a Pledge of Allegiance. Invite everyone to join us for the pledge. If you'd like to shut off your video, Dan will put up the flag and we'll recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That might have been our worst. We will move on. We will get this. Council, you have before you an agenda for this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call vote for the agenda, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Agenda's approved. Next item on our agenda this evening is our open forum. Open forum is residents' time to address council. A quick reminder that council typically does not engage in conversation, but many times we'll ask staff to reach out to residents to address any concerns that they may have. I believe we've got a resident who would like to address council this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So I'm going to move them here. And the resident is Don Katoski.
Welcome, Mr. Kotowski.
Good evening.
And
Can you hear me well
good
enough?
evening. We hear you loud and clear. Welcome.
Okay, I'll just read the letter that I wrote and sent to you. We received a letter attached after January 20th. We are currently in the process of constructing a beautiful home at 8374 North Shore Trail. something that will yield public dividend to the city and neighborhood upon completion. Our understanding of the city code is that semi-trailers a semi-trailer does not fall in the category of a storage container, temporary or otherwise. The ordinance that applies to storage containers outlines the use of these containers on a permanent basis throughout the city. Motorhomes and travel trailers are stored on residential lots. Additionally, the trailers sited between the property and the lake were not ours, and they were not on our property. Furthermore, these were dock sections on wheels, and the owner removed these last fall. Please update your records to show that this issue has been resolved. A cursory view of multiple properties on North Shore Trail and throughout the city appear to be the subject of the same violations we are accused of. After the letter was sent, we actively tried to contact officials in charge, namely Donovan Hart, only to receive no response until after the August 3rd had lapsed. When Mr. Hart eventually responded, he threatened criminal misdemeanor citation. I do not believe this is an appropriate response for our queries requesting a beneficial solution. Like we mentioned, this is an active construction site for the betterment of us and the neighboring area. We want the trailer gone as much as anyone, but causing unnecessary economic hardship and further delays serve nobody's interest, especially given the hardships associated with the pandemic, unemployment, shortage of subcontractors, and of course, health concerns. We have a hard time comprehending why this is an issue. If there is anyone exerting undue influence in this matter, and if there have been complaints registered, we demand our legal right to know who is leveling. Besides economic hardships and uncertainty, we have faced medical issues. Jolene, my wife, broke her 2 bones in her lower leg just above the ankle this winter while slipping on ice. We are tackling this daunting task, the reconstruction of the home as a family. My 2 sons, my wife, daughter-in-law, and one son's girlfriend are helping me with this project. We are currently approximately 2/3 done siding. Once we have the exterior buttoned up, we will put the inside, be ready and pour the floors. Then we can hang the garage door and secure the house for storage purposes. We are anxious to accomplish this so we can stop paying for the trailer and get it off the lot. This is not time to level questionable ordinances or codes given the numerous apparent infractions along North Shore Trail and throughout the city. During the construction, we have been renting houses and renting semi-trailer amounting to about $45,000 in expenses. These are expenses we are pursuing and attempting to eliminate with the construction of the house. As soon as the basement floor is poured, we can button up the residence this fall, and the summer trailer will be moved as adequate storage will be available. What we are proposing is a workable solution, one which we hope is accepted. Otherwise, we will pursue the legal representation. We have been working diligently over many hours towards the completion of our home. Any casual observer could see the progress being made. Simply moving the trailer is not an option, as it would have to be completely emptied and repacked to ensure against breakage. We request the construction be allowed to continue unobstructed, and we have been working daily to accomplish a plan that has been in the works for over 30 years. We kindly ask you to respect our property and homeowner rights as citizens of the city since 1984. One thing that I have a problem, I don't understand why this should be such an adversarial situation. don't really understand what harm is being done. The trailer is not impeding traffic. It's just there, and we will get it out of the way as soon as we can. We're constructing the house, doing a great deal of the work ourselves, and for financial reasons. So I would like this mandate or whatever to be reconsidered. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Kotowski. I believe your message tonight was also in email form. And so Karen, if I could ask you to forward that on to council members so that they have the detail. And then
Yes,
I guess
will.
I would encourage Mr. Kotowski to continue to work with city staff on understanding our current ordinances and what a workable solution might look like. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Karen, were there any other submissions for open forum this evening?
There is not.
Okay. Council, our next agenda item this evening is our consent agenda. We do have items 6A through 6O on the consent agenda this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Gerard.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through F, H through J, and L through O. And so basically pulling G and K for discussion, please.
There is a motion. Is there a second on that motion or any other changes?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Karen, could we have a roll call vote on the motion?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda items approved and moved to the regular agenda. And first up is items 6G, which is the Lighthouse Loft Letter of Credit Reduction number 6. Councilmember Gerard?
Actually, both 6G and K are the same. This is the questions probably for City Engineer Ryan Goodman. Typically, when we get an approval to do a letter of credit reduction or a contractor request for payment, it usually states that we recommend that the council approve the reduction. In this case, on both of these, it was requested that we consider to reduce and not recommend to reduce. I'm just wondering if it's just a different way of doing it. They were in bold in the reports. I'm just a little uncertain if something different was supposed to happen.
Councilmember Gerard, I'll jump in on this. Sometimes in the past, we've had quite the discussion on some site improvements related to letter of credits on something that you guys might hear that I don't know, that when it comes for an approval and reduction of the sites, it could be just a neighbor dispute too going on or something like that. This gives you guys the opportunity to go through the process, whether you have questions just like you do here or not. So it's really a recommendation or a request. Same thing in my view in this circumstance. It's not a final acceptance of the project, as they still have some site work to finish on their private site improvements, but all the public improvements now have been completed and approved by the city and the watershed district.
Thank you, Ryan. So you consider this one and the same regardless of how you requested it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Correct.
But it is your intent, Ryan, to raise this to council's consideration and just make sure that give us an opportunity to ask any questions.
Yeah, it's just one other step that I've always done that just provides transparency on these projects. Sometimes they provide your only updates you guys might see. In getting all the questions from the public on the backside that I don't know about, or just, open discussion about a site if, there's issues or concerns. So it's just, a document we prepare to just show the transparency of when we go through these reductions and the data behind it on what we're reducing and why, and what we're holding still and why. And, you know, just again, just another opportunity for you guys as elected officials to deal with any questions or concerns on some of these improvements, you know, especially when, you know, when we did have Second Avenue torn up, there were a lot of questions going on. So that just provided, you know, some update for you guys to have something physically to look at.
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess with that, I would suggest maybe we address these individually. And so first would be 6K, the Lighthouse Loft Letter of Credit Reduction number 6. Council, any further questions, concerns specific to that letter of credit reduction?
This is G, not K, G?
I'm sorry, 6G, yes.
Okay. And I guess just I'm a little bit confused here. Are we comfortable where we are with this project? I mean, knowing the issues that we've had, kind of the ongoing issues that we've had, are we comfortable? And I'm assuming, Ryan, you wouldn't have brought this forward if we weren't, but I just I'm a little unclear on the differentiation here.
I brought you forward a reduction for the work they've completed and has been accepted.
Okay.
The remaining letter of credit is to cover work that hasn't been completed, but it so happens to be on their site. They have not done the landscaping on the west side of the parking lot. That's in their approved plan of the conditions of approval of the project. And then on the north side, the driveway to Rube's Tire, which they had curb and gutter in, it was obviously put in at the wrong elevation. So they removed it and asked if they could just make it all blacktop. And we said, that's fine, because, you know, there might be redevelopment to Rube's to the north, but they left it gravel. So those are the two things that's still being withheld on the private site. Other than that, all the other stuff is done and been and signed off on.
Okay.
We're not going to hold, you know, money, you know, this gets into a touchy situation. So you you can't hold money for stuff that's already been done and accepted.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't quite sure where this was going. I needed that clarification that, you know, I feel confident voting that the 5,750 is the cost of the remaining work.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve item 6G, Lighthouse Loft Letter of Credit Reduction number 6.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Our next item is item 6K, which is the Third Lake Estates Letter of Credit Reduction number 3. Councilmember Gerard already explained his thought process on pulling. Ryan has clarified. I guess, Council, I would ask if there are any other questions specific to this letter of credit reduction. I'm gonna.
Mayor Bain, I do have a question on this one. And I might just repeating what Councilmember Byström just asked you, Ryan, but I just want to double check because I receive a lot of emails about this project. Full transparency, I live by this project. So this is just approving the work that has been done that we have accepted. It is not approving for the work that hasn't been done. I've received numerous emails about the erosion and dust control, which there was chemical laid down, And I'm curious if there are guidelines around that, of who can do that.
Two questions there. Ryan, you want to tackle those?
Mayor, City Council. So on the second page of my memo, there's a breakdown of costs.
Okay.
The stuff that you see in red is what I've changed from the last letter of credit. The stuff that's still in bold black is unchanged because they haven't done the work yet. Now, each time that we go through a letter of credit reduction process, we go through a formal estimate of what we think if we had to walk in tomorrow to go finish the project. However, on this job, because they're accessing a portion of the development through a gravel road, that part of the plat requirements that require them to pave the gravel road, we said before we entertain another letter of credit reduction, because of all the complaints the city staff was receiving, you have to do something to address the dust issue on 224th.
Mhm.
The developer has applied 2 applications of dust control, calcium chloride. And then you can also see that I've added a line item to this current letter of credit to account for future dust control applications that are going to get us, up to a point. Is it Donovan, is the development agreement off your memory 2022 or 23 require the workhorse paving or 70% build out, whatever one comes first. And then at that point, then basically the developer is going to be done. And then this is going to be coming back, fall on the building permit requirements on future, house construction. But so we've made the developer do something to deal with the complaints, and then we have accounted for a future cost in here, as you can see in number 4, with erosion control / dust control.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Yep.
Any other questions on this item this evening? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
And Mayor, make a motion to approve item 6K of the consent agenda for Third Lake Estates letter of credit reduction number 3.
I'll second.
That's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? I will just say thanks, Ryan, for being responsive to some of the resident concerns we've had and working that into the letter of credit accordingly. So much appreciated. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Moving on to our regular agenda item this evening. Our first item is item 7A, Resolution 08242001, Headwaters 123 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. And Donovan, you are going to walk us through this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to present it's something of a dual application. It's both for a comprehensive plan amendment with the resolution that the mayor just mentioned, as well as the ordinance 697, which is a zoning map amendment. These pertain to the same property. This is a property that council has some familiarity with, both through the July 20th joint EDA council and plan commission workshop, where we discussed these applications and the city's desire to alter this current zoning and future land use for this property to further city economic development goals. And also, I'm sure you're aware of it through the EDA work that's been going on for almost 2 years now regarding preparing this site for the Tech Corridor Initiative. Of course, that's being quarterbacked by Dan with the EDA. And I'd like to make my presentation somewhat short, since you do have this familiarity with this, and then allow it for the questions so we can target any concerns or questions you have. As well as I want to remind you that both of these motions, if council chooses to make motions for both the comprehensive plan amendment as well as the ordinance change, require supermajorities. That is a 4 vote out of 5 since that's what the Met Council requires for the comprehensive plan amendment applications, as well as for any property that's being rezoned from residential to commercial. Our zoning code requires that supermajority in this, or 2/3 majority, which in this case is 4 votes. So I'd like to present the share my screen and show you some of the basic information around this. As you can see, the outline in blue here is the Headwaters 123 property, city owned, 123 acres. That's Headwaters Parkway on the north, the Highway 61 on the east there. Currently, the zoning map, I'm sorry, the future land use map looks like this. This is from the 2040 future land use plan, where the property is a mixture of mixed use, which is that diagonal red and yellow shaded portion, approximately 90 acres. And then this low to medium density residential property, about 33 acres on the south here. And this is Tanner's Brook Golf Course, to give you a little more orientation there. So that's a future land use plan. And this is what involves with the comprehensive plan amendment to shift that from the this mixed use and this residential future land use categories to business park. And you can see a little bit of the business park in its gray on the far side of Highway 61 there. So the what staff is asking council to approve, and this was recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission for approval, is to basically turn this Headwaters 123 into that gray color, which is the business park. And that would allow the type of uses that are envisioned in the Tech Corridor Initiative, as well as other job centers, with the overarching desire to have something of a replacement for the job center that the city well, we'll see, may or may not get in that southwest corner, where the comp plan did envision a interstate interchange. But that's to be determined whether that will come. But this is something that the city is shifting to in response to some RFIs. That's request for information for properties, as well as at least one serious data center interest in this property. And this is also in your staff packet. You saw some of the presentations given by Chris Eng from the Washington County CDA, Bruce, help me out, Dan, with from Great River Energy, Bruce Saylor, I believe.
Yeah, Bruce Saylor, correct.
Yes, and Dan Peterson, who is the CBRE broker for this property. So I think, and this was a subject of multiple conversations with the Planning Commission, and of course that workshop that you also participated in. And I think it was actually a great opportunity to really show and collect a lot of information that the staff and different representatives have, or advocates or of the parcels have pulled together. So that's the comprehensive plan amendment piece. That's the resolution. And then for council to consider. And then next is contingent on a comprehensive plan amendment being approved by of course, being the resolution approved by council, but then of course the council comprehensive plan amendment approved, is a zoning map amendment. This is the subject of the ordinance. And this relates to rezoning the Headwaters 123 property in tan here. The shaded piece means the planned unit development. That's from Headwaters. And the proposed zoning map amendment changes all this to business park zoning district, which is different than business park future land use category. Also removes that Headwaters PD piece of it, which mostly deals with the residential, so is not applicable as a as a business park. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions from the city council.
Thank you, Donovan. And Donovan presented both items from our agenda this evening. I'm happy to entertain questions on both items. We will take action individually, but maybe given the amount of conversation that has occurred to date already in previous meetings, maybe from a discussion standpoint, we could consider both. Council members, any questions you may have for Donovan or staff on either the resolution or the ordinance that is before us this evening? Not seeing any questions. And Donovan, thank you for including in the packet the materials that were presented to the Planning Commission. I thought both the listing agent, the Minnesota Technology Corridor team, as well as our partners at Washington County just did an excellent job, and yourself. And Dan Undum did an excellent job of just presenting what the opportunity is for the city and why we would be considering such a move. So just great job and much appreciated. Also appreciation to the Planning Commission and the EDA who have all put in a lot of work on getting this project to this point. So much appreciated. Any questions, or I would entertain a motion. The first item to be considered this evening is the resolution 08242001, and that is on page 95 of your packet. And I will kick us off by making a motion that we approve resolution 08242001.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that item? Not seeing any discussion. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Next item on the agenda is the related item, which is the ordinance number 696, the amendment to the business. I'm sorry, I am on the wrong ordinance. Bear with me. The ordinance 697, an ordinance amending the City of Forest Lake official zoning map, rezoning property identified by PID numbers 29.032.21.23.0002 and 29.032.21.24.0001, located within the Headwaters development area from mixed residential, single family, and townhouse district MXR1 to business park CP. And that is on page 97. I motion we approve ordinance 697.
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Sam can have it.
I believe I heard Councilmember Husnick first. Any discussion on the ordinance 697 this evening? Not seeing any. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, and motion's approved. Moving on to our next agenda item this evening, item 7C, CARES Act expense budget approval. I believe we've got Captain Weiss and Chief Newman to walk us through this. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bain and members of council. First of all, I'd like to thank the department heads and all the employees of the city that worked tirelessly to get this list in front of us and to vet this list. And as we continue to battle COVID-19 within the city and our businesses, as well as our staff, emergency management within the city remains well prepared, and mitigation plans that we have, they've been used and they've worked well. In front of you in the packet is the CARES Act funding request that has been gone over by staff. It shows the CARES Act funding for the city of Forest Lake in the amount of $1.551 million and 86 cents. And with the funding that was vetted by staff, leaves an amount of $424,842.68 left over. I'm not going to go through the list exactly, but if you have any questions, I'd be willing to answer them for you.
Before we jump into additional questions, Captain, as Chief Newman, could you just walk us through kind of the process that you've gone through on coming up with this list, and just what have been some of the major considerations? Just give us a little more context.
Yeah, several months ago when this was announced, myself and Chief Newman got busy on creating a database that we could include all staff to make sure that we hit all corners of the city in both loss of revenue, in expenses to fight the battle, and also for equipment that we have used and had to purchase, or equipment that is going to be needed as we went through different events such as the food drive at the YMCA. We saw a vast need for equipment as this continues, and we don't anticipate this going away anytime soon. So to be well prepared as a city, as we've done in the past with PPE and getting on top of things, this just betters our fight against this. And having the staff as a whole involved instead of one or two people putting this list together was vital, because there were things that me, Chief Newman, and myself didn't think about in the Parks Department or in in the building maintenance department and things like this. So it was a team effort for sure on this one, but it was definitely a team. All the paperwork that has been requested, all the paperwork that was requested by the state to get this funding is complete, and we've actually already submitted our expenses to date, which is in this inclusion as well.
Thank you. Questions, Council, what questions do you have? Councilmember Husnick.
There has to be some sort of an approval process, or how does that work? Who says yes or no when they look at your expenses that we've used so far, and or is that kind of left up to us to do that?
Well, what we did to do this in the letter to the council, there's different guidelines that the Treasury Department is looking for to qualify for an expense. So we took every one of these expenses. We took every expense that was asked to buy, which is not included in this list, and we vetted them. So we took each question by the Treasury Department. Does it fit the audit requirements? If 10 years down the road, I'll be retired and gone, but 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, the auditors come knocking, and we want to make sure. So every one of these items has a separate packet or a separate sheet vetting the item and what it's used for and why the expense is vital to battle the COVID. So it's my understanding, and Patrick, please jump in, but it's my understanding that the council would approve this initial expenditure because of the sheer amount, and move forward from that point and decide at that point with council direction on what that remainder of that $400,000 some odd dollars would be used for. If that makes sense, Councilmember Husnick.
Yeah, correct. The as you all know, that any monies that the city does not expend needs to be returned to the county and then obviously to the federal government. One of the requirements of the CARES Act is to pass a budget. The council has to pass a CARES Act budget to identify where this money is going. So what we're asking for tonight is to pass this preliminary budget so that we can get going. If things come up within the next few months that we have missed or that we have an opportunity, we'll have to come back and ask you for an amended budget, being that this all has to be bought, built, sold, invoiced, and paid by November, actually the first part of November. So we're on a tight time schedule on all of these items, but if we have anything else that comes up before us that we can include, we'll try, but this is a pretty comprehensive list at this point.
Well, thanks. I just wanted to make sure that it was out there for the public to understand how this works. And so, based on what I've heard so far and what I've been reading about it and everything, I'd make a motion that we approve the CARES Act expense budget that's been approved so far through
Just one item here is that I don't believe we've included the senior citizen center loss of revenue in this. So we would need to amend this. I would request that you amend this prior to your adoption of this and add $25,000 to this total.
I would amend my motion for that extra 25,000. Will that help?
A follow-on question. Well, actually, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Other questions and discussion, and I guess a follow-on question to the addition for the senior center. There were some additional, and then maybe this is, I know there were some additional senior center items that were done to the building. I want to make sure that we've incorporated those. Is that what I'm seeing under the building maintenance budget?
Building maintenance budget?
6,500. Yeah, HVAC, UV light, senior center. Was there other things that were also done to the senior center?
I don't believe there's that much more because they were pretty prepared for, they already had some cleaning stations. We've looked into that. If we have to make more adjustments, we will. But the 25,000 basically we're talking about is a loss of their program revenue that they've incurred to date because they really haven't been meeting, collecting dues, or however else they raise money. So.
Okay. An additional question. I know Public Works was working with businesses that were setting up temporary patio spaces on some of the barricades. Have we incorporated and included those costs of those barriers in this?
Yes, they are included in this, in the initial expense.
Okay. A question, so there's an outstanding question that from somewhat from the EDA and also from our understanding of what Washington County is doing with their grant program. So I understand that there are some municipalities that are using some of their CARES Act funding for business grants to provide some relief to businesses within their communities that have been impacted by COVID. This currently does not anticipate any sort of a funding of such a program from a Forest Lake perspective, right?
That's correct, and Dan will take this if I speak here, but Washington County has a pretty robust business assistance program that they're offering. They also have a lot more funding than we would have. I think it's in the business's best interest to go to the county because I think that's where they can get more money than we can probably offer them. We still have some excess money that we could consider later on as some assistance if that's necessary, but right now we would point them to Washington County, who has the funding and expertise to put together a plan or a program that can fund these businesses who need the help.
And just to piggyback off of that.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Just to piggyback off of that, they ran their program for 2 weeks, so it just closed today. They closed the application period today, and they're meeting tomorrow to potentially look at doing an expansion of it. They did not hit the number of applications they were hoping to in the initial round. So they still have excess money in their initial grant pool that they have. So they're looking at either expanding the net, kind of readjusting standards. The issue that we would have is that if we do an individual program, we need to see if that business has applied through Washington County. We need to make sure that they're not double dipping on funds. So if they're paying mortgage, rent, lost revenue, we could not use our grant program to basically give them more money towards those. They'd have to use them for additional funds. So I am working with Chris to see if they need more funds because we could potentially just piggyback funds to the county program if need be. But right now they are sitting on some excess funds right now. They're looking at what they're going to do with moving forward.
I hear that, and I think that there is likely a communication and an awareness challenge of businesses not knowing about the program or not being able to, it's more of an awareness issue than an economic issue. I know I would suspect that there you know, with full awareness, there should be, you know, many times the demand over, you know, available funds for some of those programs. So I guess I'm surprised that they haven't been inundated with requests. But also, I guess I would, rather than us taking the $400,000 of remaining dollars and just turning that over to the county, if we have an opportunity to piggyback on that program and do some specific expansion of dollars to Forest Lake impacted businesses, I would like to see us take advantage of that and use our allotted funds as much as we can within Forest Lake. Council, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, you know, kind of what would be the plan for those excess funds?
Mayor Bain, just to give council one more piece of information, the Fairview Health provider has also asked for a portion of our funding in the amount of $104,317. We did not include that yet because we wanted to make sure we had enough money to fund the things we do. If we get further down the road towards November, we may bring this back for your consideration if it aids the community health provider. We just wanted to wait and see until a little later towards November that we make sure we have any money for them and that we don't have our own needs to meet. So because the virus isn't done, we may run into things we don't know about yet. So we'll bring that back if we can.
Thank you for that. I guess I would recommend, I guess I support, and so appreciate the work that's been done to the preliminary budget, and I would support passing the preliminary budget tonight with instructions to staff to come back with some recommended next steps for a, you know, what a Forest Lake Washington County partnership for a grant program might look like, based on number of Forest Lake applicants and just what does that pool look like. And then also include in that the request from Fairview, and that we would consider that at a future council meeting as an amendment.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that as well. I reviewed the Washington County proposal and the scope felt fairly narrow to me. And I'm wondering about opportunity to maybe look at need a little more broadly. I don't know what that means. I'm not in a position to define it right here in the moment, but I just remember that was my immediate reaction in reviewing that, is that it felt very narrow in scope. So I would support taking a little deeper look at that.
Yeah, and I can appreciate an initial, I can appreciate that Washington County not having been in this situation before, wasn't quite sure what to expect as far as applicants. And so putting maybe initially some pretty narrow parameters in so that you're able to spread, funding accordingly. But I got some similar feedback, Councilmember Byström, from a couple of businesses on the cap on total revenue. And so the targeted businesses seem to be quite small. And again, I'd rather as long as the CARES Act funding doesn't have a revenue component or a revenue limiter, I'd rather us, again, use those dollars here in Forest Lake on COVID impact rather than passing it on. If the county doesn't use it, I understand they pass it on to the state. Somebody's going to be using those funds, and I'd like us to find whatever we can to keep those dollars here as much as possible. Also of interest, and I guess, Dan, I'd pass this I just got this feedback as we were going into our EDA meeting, so I haven't had a chance to talk to you separately, but I did get some feedback from a Washington County mayor that they are maybe using the Washington County application as their application process, but they want to have a tight tie to the city. And recognition for those businesses that this is coming from the city. This isn't a Washington County program. This is part of something the city is doing to partner with you. And I think that messaging is important as well. I appreciate our Washington County partnership, but whatever we do, those are city distribution of CARES Act dollars that are being used for that program. And I think that messaging is important. And also it's our we have some control over parameters and what we wanted that program to look like. And I think there's some benefit to that. to the extent we can get it.
Dan, did this funding, I just can't quite recall, was the funding available for nonprofits as well?
You know, I'd have to double check the standards on it. I thought it was designed for for-profit entities.
Okay.
But I'd have to confirm that. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Because I know there was some funding, CARES Act funding at points in time. It wasn't designed for nonprofits, but then it was. They were bouncing all over the board with those parameters. But I know that, we've got some nonprofits in the area that have really struggled through this as well, that could potentially use some support. I mean, they just had to completely pivot and start doing things a different way, and really had some related expenditures that, probably weren't in the budget. So, so I'm not sure if there's an opportunity there, but just to keep those smaller nonprofits on the radar as well.
Council, other questions on this topic or comments? We have a motion to approve the amended suggested amount, and that amendment includes the additional amount for the senior center. There's a motion and a second on the table for that. Any further discussion before we vote? I guess quick clarification, this is an approval of a preliminary budget, and then the expectation is that this gets revised as additional information becomes available between now and that final funding date in November. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. What this will really do is allow us to spend some more of the money. It's already accounting for some of the money we spent, but some of it's also, it's you giving us permission to move forward on the items listed. And then we will come back with any adjustments before the end of October to have you approve those as well.
Excellent. And then to Councilmember Husnick's point previously, these are dollars that are made available to us from the federal government via the CARES Act.
Correct.
With that, Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard.
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion's approved. Our next item on the agenda this evening is ordinance number 696, amendment to business licensing effective date terms. Karen, I believe you're walking us through this.
I am. So this is ordinance number 696. It is about business licensing, and this has been to council on a previous meeting. So this essentially is changing the ordinance. It's the business licensing effective dates for annual renewals. This was being changed because some of our business licensing, the effective dates were February 1st to January 31st, and others were effective at the beginning of the year through December 31st. So to make everything cohesive, this ordinance is coming forward to change all business licensing annual renewal dates from starting February 1st and then expiring on January 31st of the following year. This is good. Council has a lot of meetings. In November and December, we don't have as many meetings. This is better for finance in terms of when these applications actually come in. The majority of them usually come in January, which is after the expiration date of December 31st. So this would avoid expirations for business owners. It would be better workflow for the finance department. We don't have as many meetings towards the end of the year. It helps businesses out because they have obviously holidays and other things that they're thinking of. So recommendation is to approve the change for the business licensing terms, business licensing effective dates, the terms on the effective dates.
Thank you, Karen. Council, for your reference, ordinance 696 is on page 135 of your packet. Any questions of Karen or discussion? Councilmember Gerard.
Maybe you've told us this before, Karen, but so the month of January of 2021,
Yep.
these businesses that don't line up, and granted, you got the biggies, the cigarettes and the alcohol. So what do they not have a license for January of 2021? And is that an issue in any way?
I think that's accounted for in the ordinance. It shouldn't be an issue. I really hate to say it. It shouldn't be an issue because the majority of those business renewals don't come in until January anyways, when they've already expired on December 31st. So I quickly try to hustle and get them through in January. And the good news is all the tobacco licensing, I was very, very impressed. And I think part of it had to do with Dan fronting that whole thing and just we're keeping everybody on board. But the tobacco licensing went beautifully last year and everybody did what they were supposed to do. So this is kind of a way to get everybody all on the same page with those effective dates.
Thank you.
And maybe January will be, nobody will expire then.
To that end, do we need to pass an additional provision that does just extend over them rather than having everybody in an unlicensed status for that 1 month? Do we need to do some sort of a separate one-time consideration to do a technical extension?
I'm going to defer to Amanda because she did help with the ordinance and I don't know if that was accounted for in the ordinance. I thought that it was. There was some discussion that Amanda and I had back and forth in an email about the dates. So.
Could you repeat the question, Mara?
Yeah, so does the ordinance account for and give essentially an extension over this month of January 2021, or are we effectively leaving everybody unlicensed for that 1 month? Do we need to do something separate to account for that 1 month? What's the recommended path?
Yeah, Your Honor, we did talk about that back and forth and decided that for the amount of work, it wasn't worth putting something in the ordinance that was just going to cover a month this one time. And we were just going to move forward with the new schedule and kind of ignore January for the purpose of that. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I'm thinking if I am comfortable with that. Does that leave us in a tenuous or a place we wouldn't want to be for that 1 month if we had to take enforcement action? And maybe you're saying the risk is low and it's not worth the effort.
Yeah, it was determined that at this point we were going to leave it for this 1 month instead of having a bunch of language in there regarding this 1 month, this one time. That was basically going to create a lot of clutter in the ordinance, try to keep it really clean moving forward. So future staff could interpret it very clearly what we were trying to do. We decided to leave it as you see it, where we don't address the January.
And essentially, I guess a reminder to anyone who's watching this conversation or listening to this conversation, the big hitters or the areas with most risk are liquor and tobacco, and those already have the amended dates. So this really is the lower risk license areas, pawnbrokers and other light massage and other areas that we've had less historical enforcement action. And so with that distinction, I guess I'm comfortable with the current approach, if that's staff's recommendation.
Yeah, and part of what we had discussed was sort of the issue of how to prorate billing and charging for sort of a 12-month, 13-month license versus an 11-month license, and kind of all of the logistics behind the administration of that. We decided that with those other aspects, we were going to leave it clean, as clean as we could do.
Mara, if you don't mind,
Councilmember Husnick. Yes.
maybe we could just make a really simple motion to give a 1 month grace period for that 1 month only for January of 2021. And based on that, I'd make a motion to that effect that we accept ordinance 696, allowing for a 1 month grace period to include the month of January 2021.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Thank you for the work on that. Our next agenda item this evening, item 7E, water turnoff notices for non-compliance. Dave, I believe you're walking us through this one.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to seek approval for water shutoffs for non-compliant residents. So most of you are aware that we're in the middle of a water meter replacement program. It's going extremely well. We started off with approximately 3,500 meters to be replaced. We're down to roughly about 400 left. So at about 10% of the meters are left to get changed. A bunch of them are larger style meters that are already scheduled to be done. They're just still on the list. But these replacements, they've all received four notices telling them to contact Ferguson Waterworks to get their meters replaced. There's not been response to that list that has been sent, a response to any one of the four letters. So we're here tonight seeking approval to send out certified letters via city to actually shut their water off if you do not let us in the property. City ordinance, I believe it's 5105, requires residents to give access to the city, the water meters. And these residents are violating city ordinance by not responding to the mail. The good part about the certified is that we'll know that they get it. You know, these letters that are sent out by Ferguson, we're not quite sure if they've made it to the right property owner, if they've made it to a renter, or we don't know that for sure. But these certified, they signed for that letter. We know that somebody either in the house or the owner got that letter, so we're able to confirm that somebody read that letter or got that letter mailed to them. It's pretty similar to, I believe in 1918 we came here, it was a lot smaller of a list. It was the same thing, trying to change residents' meters out. And both of those cases, I think the highest one was about 20 some. None of those people had their water shut off. As soon as you send them a certified letter and paint a blue dot in their front yard, they seem to start complying with those letters. So it's a large amount. The plan would be to send out about 100 at a time, and then kind of stagger them, and then kind of go through that process. The list below too was as of Wednesday. There's a lot that are coming in after that fourth notice. You know, telling people that there's a pretty good chance their water will be shut off. But at this point, Ferguson doesn't have the authority to shut water off or to ask us to shut it off. It's the city and you know, has a council approval. So kind of at this point, it's not the desired route, but you know, substantial completion for the project has to be when we do the next water meter read, and that's on the end of last week in September, and then full completion has to be in October. So we're kind of getting close to where we have to get these online and get the new meters in. So this is kind of at the end where we need to get these last ones in to make that happen. And so yeah, that's approximately it. And take any questions if you have any.
All right, I think you're on mute. I didn't hear it. I lost you someplace.
might have a dead headset. Are you hearing me now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
All right, sorry about that. Dead headset. Council, what questions do you have of Dave?
Mara, I just have a comment to make. Can you hear me okay? This happens to be our own experience, our own personal experience with Ferguson. We, as soon as we got the notifications they're going to be doing this, we applied for it right away, got our house done and our hangar done right away. Just let's get it done. Well, then I started getting letters about we weren't in compliance. We got three notices, and with phone calls in between to try to get this straightened out. The answer was always, well, we don't know. You got to check with the water department or whatever. My only concern with, it seems to me there's some issues with their bookkeeping along the way here. So the certified letters at least bring that forward, but there is some issues with their bookkeeping, and I know that firsthand. So I just wanted to bring that up.
There was an issue, or maybe not an issue, but there's some lag time, and when Ferguson does the meter to when the city gets the list of ones that have been done to the time that our third party Opus inputs it in. So there's not, maybe not specifically yours, but has been some where it's been changed out kind of right in the window of when the next mailers went out. Can't explain the three, but that's happened to a few people where it was changed, but then that updated spreadsheet hasn't happened. But we did on Wednesday get this list of the 400 or so that haven't been changed out. They also sent a spreadsheet of all the meters that have been already changed, and Becky in the utilities department is cross-referencing all of them to make sure they're not on both lists, or there's ones on the change out list that shouldn't be on there, or ones on the changed out ones that really haven't been changed out. So we've kind of been going through that to make sure, the ones on that final list that'll get the letters are indeed, still haven't had that meter changed.
Thank you, Dave. Other questions of Dave? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the water turnoff non-compliance system, or whatever you want to call it, that we're going to go through by mailing out the letters and then going from there. So
there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I guess I know that we have, part of our contract was to rely on Ferguson for those and those notifications. If it's appropriate for us to do some additional city communications as a last ditch effort prior to sending off the shut off notices, including it in the weekly email blast, social media posts, if that's appropriate, if we're at the spot where we're ready to have some citywide notification, I think is helpful. If nothing else, just to take the sting off of the water turn off notice. It certainly gets attention, but it's not the best experience. And I get it. They've already gotten 4 notices, but a lot of people just don't get their mail anymore. And so it's part of the situation we're in. So I fully support this, and I know Ferguson has done a lot of work on notifications, and that's part of the communication we have. But whatever we can do to kind of take the sting away from the water turn off notice is helpful.
Mayor
Any
Boehner,
other discussion? Go ahead.
I'm just noticing a lot of duplications on this list, Dave, as I'm reviewing it right now. I glanced at it before and thought, wow, this is a really long list. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm noting a lot of duplications. Is there a reason why there would be duplications on this list?
A lot of it, I think, is the redacted part. I don't know if you're seeing the real one or the ones with the names on it. So a lot of them are people who own multiple houses that have separate meters in different buildings, or there's apartments. There's a bunch of them that are owned by one person, but every meter is separate. So that's how it duplicates out. So if you'd see all the stuff that was blacked out, it shows property owner plus residents plus all that. So it's, you'll see a lot of multiples where there's the same name, but really it's the meter number, that final column that has the account number is the one that, you know, they're all different. Just the ones that start with the 7. Those
Yeah,
are,
and that's what I'm meaning. I mean, because I can't, the names are blacked out and they should be, but I'm looking at addresses and then kind of cross-checking over to the meter number, and I'm seeing duplicate meter numbers on here too. So
that may be where there's an account that's tied in with some person's paying the same account on multiples. You saw the full spreadsheet, it makes a lot more sense that there's not duplicates that way. It's duplicates either between properties or account numbers or certain owners. So there might be an owner that has multiple properties, but it's all coded different. That's what makes it tricky about the initial mailer. Is some person may get 40 letters, you know, so it's kind of a weird way to page through which ones am I getting done and which ones I'm not. So sometimes those residents have just waited till they got the next notice or the 4th notice to realize which ones they have not done.
that's what made me wonder if that might have been the reason why Councilmember Husnick received 4 letters.
Yep. Yep. So I've definitely got some calls on that too, where people have had it changed out and not. But like I said earlier, it's Becky and the admin is taking everyone on that list and cross-referencing with the done list on top of what she has from Opus to make sure that we are not sending out a letter to somebody who shouldn't get it, or make sure that everybody that should be getting one is getting one. So
okay.
Now that the city's kind of involved in this final step, it's going to be more city involvement, and the letter will have our phone number on there too, that if they have questions to contact us as well, not just the Ferguson number only. So it'll kind of give residents an option to call us to make sure this is legit and what the steps are. There's some people that maybe are throwing it away because of the COVID thing, and then we have a list of that as well, that if people are fearing to have people come to the house, we have a handful of them that the city and our staff will install them after this project is done. So we'll definitely comply with that as well. So all we need is for them to respond somehow and let us know what's going on. So
Great point. Thank you.
Yep.
Dave, to follow up question to that. So to the extent that council receives questions on these, who should we send them to? Is it send them your direction, send them into utility billing? Where do we send questions?
The number on there will be Becky's number for utility billing. She has a lot easier access to pull up the Opus account and to look at when someone calls, she can pull that right up. I don't have access to that, so it's easier for a resident to call in so she can pull up their information and schedule appointment. Or she's done a lot of that too, where people call her directly and actually technically schedule the appointment with her. Well, she'll just send an email to Ferguson to set the appointment. So she would be the most helpful one. So her number, her direct dial line, at City Hall will be on that mailer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Council, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion or any further questions before we vote? Seeing none, Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And that's not working. And I'm still having sound issues. Aye. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay. Motion approved. Next item on the agenda this evening is our second quarter financial report. Sandy, I believe you're walking us through this.
Yes. And hopefully you can see it on the screen. And I'm going to walk through like I did last time and kind of give some details to explain some of those line items that we're seeing. And I think some of this is going to solidify some of the things we've been talking about with the building permits. Licenses is another thing, and fines and forfeitures. We're seeing that revenue decreasing in those areas. We had something funky going on with the miscellaneous revenue where it ended up working itself at the end of the year. So that can be ignored, but we do have an increase in interest revenue beyond what we anticipated or budgeted for. However, so when we look at that bottom line, but again, this is going to look different in that next quarter, where it's going to reflect a more definite amount here. But I do anticipate, because of those license permits, those building permits, those fines and forfeitures, and being the economic times that we're in, I don't anticipate that we're going to be receiving the revenues that we normally receive. So that's something that administration is going to work on, staff's going to work on to see, what's really going to evolve by the end of the year. Of course, we're going to know more next quarter, but, should we start having those conversations, of where we're spending and, what we anticipate those revenues to come in at. Taxes are going to be what they're going to be. We didn't see anything majorly go in a wrong direction there as far as the taxes, but it's these other revenues that's a concern. Fortunately, the interest revenue is coming in higher, but I don't anticipate it's going to offset some of those other revenues that aren't coming in, but hence the reason for those budgets for 2021. It's how long is that going to last is the question. But looking at the expenditures, I see us being more in line with our budgets. The only thing that I really kind of take a look at is just to explain the elections. We're in an election year, so we're going to have different budgets and different expenditures. So it's going to be a little bit different from the prior year. We did have some additional spending in information technology compared to the prior year, but more in line with our budgets. And of course, we had some additional expenditures too that may have evolved from where we're at today, but that was something that we're going to get reimbursed for. Legal, we did bring our budgets down last year compared to where it was the prior year, but we evidently had more spending than what we thought, and so that's coming in a little bit higher over budgets. Everything else, when you look through, isn't extremely different, and emergency management, that's where we've been booking our COVID expenses. So you're going to see that increasing, but we're going to get reimbursed for that. But a lot of it too is more in line with where our budgets are, and like the engineering, it's something that we brought our budgets. Our spending is more in line with where our budgets are. So looking through here, youth services, we paid for something before we did in the prior year. There's a lot of that goes on as well. Senior center, we paid a bill earlier than what we did in the prior year. So there's a lot of that happens as well in those expenditures. But looking at that aspect, we're really kind of in line with the bottom line expenditures. It's the revenue that is something that we have to take a look at. And if there is something that we can do with expenditures to offset that, we're going to start having those conversations. Surface water, I don't see anything, too drastic with that other than the intergovernmental. We're not going to be receiving that. We budgeted for a grant, but we didn't actually get the grant. But looking at the bottom line, I don't anticipate that there's going to be too many issues with that. We do have a little bit more interest revenue again than what we anticipated. So that'll help out that situation. And looking at where we're at with the expenditures, the spending is in line more so with our budgets than what they were in the prior year. I know Dave made a lot of changes in staffing and expenditures. So I think we're in line. We did have more repairs and maintenance than in the prior years. However, we had a lot less spending in the prior year. So looking at this, I'm not seeing any major issues with the spending and surface management. And this is the user charges. It shows we're in line with what we were in the prior year. So we're not, I think that's, something that we don't have to worry about, and it's in line with where we should be. Airport, I didn't see anything major there either. There's some additional capital outlay expenditures, but that was from a reimbursable grant. So you see that reimbursable grant up in the intergovernmental revenue going up, which is paying for some of those additional expenditures in the capital outlay. Otherwise, when you look down, there really isn't anything majorly different from the prior year that's of concern. And this is just a graph that we keep track of the different revenue sources coming in for the airport and what type of things and when they come in. And of course, they're coming in at different times, but we did notice and looking at the that the hangar rent, and that may be the reason why this miscellaneous revenue is down as well. The hangar rent is coming in a little bit later than what it has in the past, but nothing too drastically, but something we're keeping an eye on. And the water fund, I think there's, and this is part of the reason why I kind of want to shore up some things too, is, because of where we're at with construction, of course, now we got the connection charges. We're getting a lot less revenue at this point in time there as well. And I'm sure that's related to where our economy is. So them are discussions I want to have with staff this week to determine where we want those budgets to really end up becoming. And so, but the interest earnings, of course, is coming in a lot more than what we had, but of course, some of that has to do with the bond. And so we have to have conversations regarding those connection charges as well. And how long do we anticipate this to occur, and where should we land within our budgets at next year? And so when you look at the total expenditures, again, I don't see anything too major there. I think there's, they're pretty much in line with where we were in the prior year. And I don't anticipate there to be too many problems with that. Again, it's that revenue source that is something to look out for. And is there anything we can do with our expenditures to sustain? Water fund sales, again, pretty much in line with what we thought. We had that increase in 2020, so we do expect that little dip up. So it's pretty graphically, it's pretty much where we thought it was going to be. Sewer fund, again, the same thing kind of happening there, those connection charges. I think the story is there of what's happening, and we need to figure out and have those conversations. Where do we think we're going to be going with this? How much are we going to be off by the end of the year? And what do we have to do to sustain it? And how long can we sustain it? And where do we have to look maybe differently to ensure that we're going to have the funding available to sustain? And the same thing with their expenditures, with the exception of the bond principal. We had, when we budgeted for it, we didn't have the same schedule. So now the schedule is coming in a little bit higher for the interest for the bonds. So we have to factor that in as well, and make sure that we factor that in ongoing, as well as in that 10-year plan. Now that we know where we're at and where our budgets are going to be for 2021, now we have to reflect that in that plan to ensure that we have the proper information.
Sandy, can you remind me, user charges, I mean, we're halfway through the year with this budget, user charges 25.3% collected year to date, or 25% of budget collected year to date. Similar pattern. What is our kind of our cadence of those collections?
And when it gets to be March, we're actually, and I know I should have asked Becky this before I left today, but it really is, we're behind that one quarter, and so our billing isn't, is going to be happening but we're not going to get those. Billing is going to happen before June, but we're not going to get those until the next quarter. So there's this delay in when we're actually billing and we're actually getting the revenue source in. So next quarter, you're going to see that 50%. And the following quarter, you're going to see that 75%, but then there's that cleanup come January or the end of the year. So there's always going to be that delay in when we actually receive our revenue. But I can actually get you the exact dates of the calendar of billing versus receiving the revenue.
Yeah, and I remember that discussion last year too, but I just couldn't quite remember what that cadence was, so.
Yeah, but there is just that delay in the quarter because we're quarterly billing.
So from a revenue standpoint, that is the case for user charges, that is just a delay. What we're seeing
Right,
though,
if you look at the prior year, it's the same trend.
What we're seeing though with the connection charges is that is a real reduction in revenue.
Right.
We're just not having that project volume with those connection charges that we would have had. And so,
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Right.
That's a helpful distinction. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you look at it compared to the prior year, it's pretty it stands out. And we've had it very good these last few years. And now, I think the economy has pretty much brought it to us as far as, not having the buildings permits like we have, and now the connection charges aren't going to occur. So I want to have a talk with staff and see where we need to go with this, or, is there something that needs to be explained?
Have we seen, because I know we had a pretty dramatic down, I mean, a straight decrease when everything shut down in mid-March. So that March to June quarter, things just came to a complete standstill. Have we started to see a shift? Have we started to see an uptick again in permit?
And this is a conversation I wanted to have with Dave, and I don't know if Dave has he's probably seeing this new tonight too. So I don't know if he has any inkling of what that's going.
If you're talking about connection charges, that's directly related to construction. Right. And new homes and the new apartment buildings. And those are petering off, to be quite honest with you. Permit revenue reflects that. The number of permits that we're issuing are about the same, but they're for remodeling and small jobs at the house and things like that. It's the larger things, the school expansions, the number of apartment buildings, the number of homes. We're starting to see that lessen as we go forward. So that's where the connection charges, it's directly related to the permit charges as well. So connection charges and permits. So you've seen us budget for less next year for the permit charges. Gonna have to do the same thing with the connection charges are going to also go down because we're not seeing the major construction items that we used to see the last couple of years.
This is a great tee up to the conversation I would expect we're probably going to have when we talk about 2021 budgets for these enterprise funds. When we did the rate study, we had quite the conversation at the council level on what was the mix that we were going to use between user charges and connection charges. And I'll be interested to see an update of that. And I appreciate we're not going to do a full rate study again, but just to see an update on how that's coming through and what we might need to do for those funds, because that weighting was a big consideration on what we were doing with user charges.
Yeah, and some of the initial look at water and sewer when we've been going with Ellers in the 10-year plan recognizes that both of those funds are in fairly decent shape, but they've done a mini rate study, and we'll kind of cover that when we get to the 10-year plan as well.
That's good.
Hey, and like I said, we're going to be adjusting these budgets accordingly and get that into that 10-year plan to reflect a more accurate picture and hopefully come up with a plan on how we're going to deal with this. And again, the user charges are in line with where we thought they were going to be. We expected that little uptick in 2020, which isn't much, but there is that little uptick, and so it's in line with where we think. And this kind of explains the timing of the payments. So you're going to see it flat from February through April, and now we're getting those payments coming in. So this graph is a good indicator of when those payments are coming in. And this is sideways. Let's see. I don't know if I can do this or not, but this is, and this is in your packet, and you can view it at your discretion. But this is the cash investments, and it has a graph just basically showing market values comparing for the prior year in certain areas, as well as the kinds of investments that are happening. And what this graph does show everybody is how we're not only how we're investing, but what we're investing. We're leaving some liquidity in our funds for, of course, those things that happen that we're not thinking of happening, but also we're pushing things later on and gaining more interest in the long run. And as you're going to see, there's more diversification happening with what we're actually investing in.
Right click your mouse a few times on rotate clockwise.
And where?
Right click, rotate clockwise. You have to do it 2 or 3 times. All right, never mind.
I wasn't finding anything, so I was like, oh boy. No, that ain't gonna do it either. But like I said, you do have this in your packet, and hopefully got a copy of it. But it's something that I provide every quarter to kind of give you an idea of what those investments look like, what that cash looks like, and provide some insight what we're doing to invest in, and what PMA is helping us with in investing and diversifying versus just putting it all into CDs. We're not putting it into CDs anymore. We're using those US Treasuries and those municipal securities, which is becoming more lucrative than going into the CDs. So they're doing a good job in investing for us and doing a comparable ability to do it long-term, as well as to have that short-term liquidity. And that's all I have for you on the quarterly report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Sandy. Council, questions of Sandy of the quarterly report? And Sandy, could I have you stop sharing your screen just so we're able to see all participants? There we go. Thank you. Council, any further questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to approve the second quarter report. Councilmember Gerard.
It really has to do with the investments. I think Sandy, you gave a nice update there. So is the future to continue to draw down the money markets and the CDs? I mean, we got about 8 million in them now. Those will continue to decrease, and the government securities and immunities will continue to increase since they're doing so well.
And PMA likes to diversify, of course. It's putting it in that right mix. As you probably hear from most investors of money, that they just want to make sure that there's not too many eggs in one basket. They want to diversify it. But it's also looking at where is the market today. And, at one point, maybe CDs were better than, US securities and municipal securities. But what we're finding now is actually municipal securities are great. So it's a matter of diversifying, but also, making sure that we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck. So that you're going to, right now, that's kind of what you're seeing as before PMA came on board, we had it all in CDs, and that just wasn't a best fit for us. It was an easy way of doing things, but it wasn't the best fit for us to be able to get the biggest bang for what we're investing in. So by diversifying, of course, you're not putting too many eggs in one basket, but you also want to make sure that you're making the most of what you can. And that's what's happening right now.
I'm very happy with the end result. Don't get me
especially in 2020.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Or I will, if there's no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Karen, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Gerard,
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Second quarter financial report is approved. Moving on, that is the end of our action agenda. We will move on to staff updates. Let's start with Patrick and then go to Dan this evening.
Yes, I have no report this evening. If you have questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Dan, just
Any
move on, Dan.
Any questions for Patrick? Seeing none, we'll go to Dan, and then after Dan, we'll do Chief Peterson.
Just a quick update on the council chambers audio update. That work has been scheduled for mid-September. So Tierney will be out here in a little over 2 weeks to get that work completed. And then I was able to get the order of all of our laptops in with IT kind of before the other cities did. So those have all been ordered and should be out here soon. So got to the front of the line, which was my goal. So that's all been ordered, and now it's time to get the equipment and get it dispersed. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions people have.
Perfect. Any questions for Dan? Seeing none, we'll have Chief Peterson and then Captain Weiss.
Mayor and city council members, good evening. I don't have any specific staff updates for you, but probably similar to the other department heads, I've spent the majority of my time over the past few weeks and months working on our department's budget for 2021 and discussions regarding the CARES Act and equipment needs for the police department. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Chief? No questions. Excellent. Captain Weiss, anything else to add this evening? And we'll go to Chief Newman afterwards.
No, Mayor, members of council, I have nothing further unless you have questions.
Anything for Captain Weiss this evening? Seeing none, Chief Newman, and then we will, after Chief Newman, go to Amanda. Pete's here. We'll do Pete and Amanda after Chief Newman. Chief Newman, go ahead. And Al might be on mute. Let's skip ahead. Will Pete and Amanda, any updates this evening?
Your Honor, council members, good evening. My only update is triggered by a communication that all of you received from Council for Settled Inc. about their proposal and expectation or request for further engagement with both the council and the planning commission. I wanted to just update you to know that I am engaged with their lawyer. Staff and I and Amanda are working on this. We are not expecting or requesting any special meetings outside of the ordinary and routine processing of a development application at this point. And I would encourage, if possible, patience. I'm sure you're hearing from perhaps more than one quarter on this subject. And the temptation to start talking about it or start talking about it outside of proper channels is just something that is natural and preferably avoided. That's my only update for the evening, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the reminder and the update. Any questions for Pete or Amanda this evening? Seeing none, let's go to Ryan next, and we'll do Donovan after Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, my big announcement, I guess, is we plan on open the roundabout at Highway 97 Goodview this Friday or Saturday morning, depending on what we got. The only thing that we have left is final striping. So the contractor brought in 2 pavers Saturday to finish all the paving. But we got to let the mats sit for a couple days before we can do the final striping on that. So we plan on starting that Wednesday, pending weather, and then hopefully you can have that done by Friday to get that intersection open. So just a phenomenal job by the contractor. I mean, honestly, 60% of the time you'll get a bid and you're going to have a contractor come up with excuse after excuse and want an extension after extension. This contractor has been out there basically Monday through Saturday to the duration of the entire project. So, you know, not many can pull off what they did. So, you know, it's a local contractor just down the road. So they're also the contractor that did the phase 2 downtown Lakeside Memorial parking lots, and that was all within schedule. So, you know, they perform year after year, and so things, you know, we're just fortunate to have them on this job, and things have turned out very well.
Noted and much appreciated. We're gonna have some very happy residents to have that detour removed. There are sections of the community that have been a bit of a speedway the last couple of weeks, so be very nice to have that done. Any questions for Ryan this evening? Dave, and after Dave, we will go to Sandy.
No updates tonight unless you have anything for me.
Anything for Dave this evening? All right, thank you. Sandy, anything further for council this evening?
Nope, I don't have anything further unless anybody has any further questions.
No further, anything further for Sandy? Nothing further. So we are going to, just confirmation, we are going to notice a budget workshop for next Monday, correct? And council put that on a 6:30 start time. That will be an additional meeting that's probably not currently on your calendar. And I say that as much for my benefit as everybody else's. All right, Sandy, thank you. And Karen. We may have lost, did we lose Karen? Or she's off my screen.
I think we passed
We may have lost.
I think we passed over Donovan as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Donovan, sorry. I think we've lost Karen, but Donovan.
Yeah, I just want to report that we did have a large planning commission agenda on August 14th, and the planning commission did approve 3 local business expansions. I'm happy to report, and also that the Minnesota Lakes final PUD application is becoming for City Council review on your next September 14th council meeting. And that's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions.
Very good. And yeah, it was an amazing agenda, marathon, and they did it all within curfew and even had some chit chat time afterwards. It was an impressive amount of work got done in one evening. So well done.
Thank you.
Have I missed anybody? Karen, are you back with us? I don't think so. Let's move on to council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Husnick and then go to Councilmember Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to report except that I did attend the EDA meeting tonight. It was a workshop meeting. I know you're going to want to expand on that. So beyond that, I have nothing else. So.
Very good. Councilmember Gerard, and then we'll go to Councilmember Byström.
Thank you. To expand Donovan, the Planning Commission did have a monster meeting on the 12th, and we are going to see expansion from some businesses. There's a coffee shop, which is going in right at across from Matson's. They're going to put a parking lot in. The veterinary hospital, South Shore, next to US Bank there. They're doing an expansion, as is Jeep dealer is going to expand and have part of their building just be Jeep sales. So it's some nice business expansion to see. And as Donovan also mentioned, the mini storage is getting off the ground also. So it was a really productive meeting. And like you said, Mayor, it went quite a while, but they moved it right along.
Very good. Councilmember Byström and then Councilmember Munson.
Just attended, just a quick report, just attended the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission meeting August 19th, and Was a bit of a quick meeting. They talked a little bit about some park maintenance updates, reviewed their Q3 and Q4 work plans, and actually have selected several projects to utilize some funding for to kind of wrap up the year, get done this fall. A little, little savings without all of the activity this summer. So they're anxious to move ahead with some of those pieces. We're going to be meeting again on the Fenway Athletic Agreement. We're going to try to get 2021 taken care of quickly. Our meeting is this coming Thursday, and hopefully we'll be able to. I think we landed at a really good agreement this last go round. We simplified it considerably, cleaned it up, and I'm hoping that it's pretty simple. Just let's take a review and approval. And then just some citizen communication around the Settled Inc., some solicitation in the community again, and just mentioned to Chief Peterson and Administrator Casey about potentially getting some communication out on the need for licenses in the community, maybe some social media communication, reminding our community members that licenses are required by solicitors. And the same, I was brought to my attention, some political signs were taken down by a resident, and that created a little bit of an uproar on social media. So it might be time we're getting into political season, might be time to remind the community where those signs can and can't go, and you cannot steal them. You cannot take them down on your own. You can't do that.
even if it's in the right of way. Yes. Well timed. We have a history of signs in right of way, and it is always a good reminder, and then also things you can and cannot do with signs that are in a right of way that you may not appreciate.
Yeah. So that's all I have.
So begins the season.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Councilmember Munson.
Just a quick update. Attended the Athletic Association meeting last Tuesday. They were talking about the upcoming meeting this Thursday with Fenway Advisory Committee to kind of nail down the 2021 agreement. So looking forward to that. That's it.
Very good. Thank you. Just two quick updates from me this evening. Had a meeting earlier today, a continuation of the conversations we've been having with the YMCA and the school district. They have tentatively set the Equity Innovation Center vision session to be September 26th, 9 a.m. to noon. That is going to be a 100% remote meeting via Zoom. If you're familiar with that process, you know that is quite a change for that group to make that from a typically very collaborative in-person meeting with lots of breakout discussions and lots of contacts to virtually a virtual Zoom meeting. So they are working through what that might look like, but it is, I feel important to that, and I'm happy that they are continuing to move on with that session. The September 26th session will be the vision session, and then that will be followed up with 4 sessions in October, and those are also scheduled for half-day sessions, and that kind of sets the platform for what's next. So it's nice to see that work continue. Also tonight we had our second meeting of the downtown committee. We reviewed the SWOT analysis that had previously been prepared. We talked about how we might best use the grant dollars that we have from the county on the downtown planner resource that has been funded, and some discussion on what that looks like. Dan is working on some quotes and getting some more information available for that group to evaluate. Also, we heard a report from the Downtown Beautification Group, who continues to just be incredibly engaged and do great work. And so thank you to them for all of their efforts. And it's good to have their voices as part of that process. So again, that Downtown Initiative Group is meeting that 4th Monday of the month. Second Monday of the month is a regularly scheduled EDA meeting, and that is how we will sequence. So that group will meet again 4th Monday in September. That is all I have by way of updates. Again, a quick reminder for next Monday at 6:30 for a workshop session. And again, if you have others more specific questions around the budget that you want staff to address, or you want, as you're having conversations with the community, happy to include that content as we wrap up discussion on the general fund and then transition discussion to some of the enterprise funds. Again, a reminder, I made a mention at the beginning of this. I think during the budget workshop, there was a request from a resident that we got those budget materials posted online. And so if we could, typically we've had kind of a finance page that's had the home of all of that information. And as we add in the enterprise funds, it's a good kind of one-stop shop as those budget conversations evolve. So it's good we've got residents that are engaged and wanting to see that information. That's all I have tonight. And with nothing further on our agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And Karen, could we have a roll call, please? I think you might be on mute.
Councilmember Gerard.
Aye.
Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
All right. Have a good week.
Hey.